Hey, before I get started, I did an interview with a young Canadian journalist named Wyatt Sharp. He has a fantastic YouTube channel. I would recommend that you go subscribe to the channel. I'll link below to this interview. Go check it out. Show Wyatt some love. I would appreciate it very much. Let's talk about the Supreme Court and the problems that we face as a nation because of the absolute complicity to the conspiracy against our country, to the anti-democratic forces at play, to the fascism that is at our front door. And we are being led there by a few different forces in our influences, we'll say. One is the media that absolutely is trying to level a playing field where there is no level playing field. Another is our judiciary that is supposed to be independent. And this is a word you're going to hear when Shannon Bream, the straight news person, not from Fox News, interviews Neil Gorsuch, the Associate Justice on the Supreme Court. A radical. Another one of these individuals who, not to the level of Samuel Alito or Clarence Thomas, but is absolutely influenced by gifts and influence peddling from right-wing billionaires. So it's laughable for him to use the word independent and putting forward this idea of the judiciary of being ferociously independent, I think that the word he uses is. So I'm going to play this clip where he really, I don't want to go as far as to say levels a threat against Joe Biden and the reforms that Joe Biden seeks for the Supreme Court. You're going to hear a lot of people talk about how this is unconstitutional and a power grab. This is not unconstitutional. Any reforms of the Supreme Court are absolutely baked into the Constitution. It is a constitutionally designated role of Congress to organize the courts. It's the power. It's one of the checks and balances that are built in to the Constitution. And you would think Neil Gorsuch, being a Supreme Court justice, would know that. So anyway, listen to this clip. We'll talk about it on the other side. And then I'm going to read to you, and I want you to listen to what he has to say, because he puts it in very reasonable terms. But then I'm going to read you the 3 reforms that Joe Biden, from his own op-ed in the Washington Post, he's putting forward. And you can tell me whether that you believe that this encroaches upon the independency of the judiciary or the Supreme Court, and if they are radical reforms. First, Neil Gorsuch with journalist Shannon Bream.
You are not in a bubble here at the courts. There are real-world events happening. The president has proposed now changes to the court, supported, it appears, by the vice president, who looks like she's going to be the Democratic nominee. How does the court feel about potential changes, term limits, ethics codes that are enforced by someone in ways that it isn't now?
Shannon, you're not going to be surprised that I'm not going to get into what is now a political issue during a presidential election year. I don't think that would be helpful. I have one thought to add. It is that the independent judiciary means, what does it mean to you as an American? It means that when you're unpopular, you can get a fair hearing under the law and under the Constitution. If you're in the majority, you don't need judges and juries to hear you and protect your rights. You're popular. It's there for the moments when the spotlight's on you, when the government's coming after you. And don't you want a ferociously independent judge and a jury of your peers to make those decisions? Isn't that your right as an American? And so I just say, be careful.
One, Shannon, I don't want to get involved in during an election year. Don't ask me why I'm doing this interview on Fox News right now during an election year. We see right through your act, Gorsuch. Secondly, ferociously independent. We should have a ferociously independent judiciary. Absolutely, without doubt. We don't have that. Instead, we have a Supreme Court replete with people who are taking money hand over fist from billionaires with Hitler memorabilia collections, taking lavish trips, having their homes purchased, their mother's homes purchased, where the mother still lives in the home, but it was purchased by a billionaire. They're taking fishing trips and yacht vacations, all at the expense of billionaires. They're having their adopted kids' school tuitions paid for. This is not ferociously independent Neil Gorsuch. And that was his answer to a question about the 3 stated potential reforms for the Supreme Court. I'm going to read from this Washington Post op-ed written by Joe Biden. The title of it is, "My Plan to Reform the Supreme Court and Ensure No President is Above the Law. We can and must prevent the abuse of presidential power and restore the public's faith in our judicial system. This nation was founded on a simple yet profound principle. No one is above the law. Not the President of the United States, not a justice on the Supreme Court of the United States, no one." So let's stop there just for a moment, and I want you to remember the last thing that he said. Be careful. Be careful, Joe Biden. I know it could be taken as a threat. I don't think he's that brash or bold or brazen to level a threat against the sitting president of the United States in an interview on Fox News. That might be a bridge too far for me. But let's remember those words. Be careful. Joe Biden says no one is above the law. Be careful, Joe Biden. First, back to the article, I am calling for a constitutional amendment called the No One is Above the Law Amendment. It would make clear that there is no immunity for crimes a former president committed while in office. I share our founders' belief that the president's power is limited, not absolute. We are a nation of laws, not of kings or dictators. Be careful, Joe Biden. These are radical reforms. Be careful. What do you mean a president can't dispatch a military unit to assassinate a political opponent under the guise of an official duty? Be careful. Second, we have had term limits for presidents for nearly 75 years. We should have the same for Supreme Court justices. The United States is the only major constitutional democracy that gives lifetime seats to its high court. Term limits would help ensure that the court's membership changes with some regularity. That would make timing for court nominations more predictable and less arbitrary. It would reduce the chances that any single presidency radically alters the makeup of the court for generations to come. I support a system in which the president would appoint a justice every 2 years to spend 18 years in active service on the Supreme Court. Be careful, Joe Biden. Be careful. What does he need to be careful about? About a absolutely sensible reform to our judiciary, to the highest court in the land that we now have a problem with. Again, taking money hand over fist and trips and vacations and houses and RVs that get paid off. Third, I'm calling for a binding code of conduct for the Supreme Court. This is common sense. The court's current voluntary ethics code is weak and self-enforced. Justices should be required to disclose gifts, refrain from public political activity, and recuse themselves from cases in which they or their spouses have financial or other conflicts of interest. Every other federal judge is bound by an enforceable code of conduct, and there is no reason for the Supreme Court to be exempt. Be careful, Joe Biden. How dare you try to hold the Supreme Court accountable? Be careful. Anyway, when I do videos about the Supreme Court, they don't get eyeballs as much. And I'll wait to say this now, not at the front, because if you're here, that means you are interested. Share this video. Share this clip even. Just get this on someone's radar of what a rogue Supreme Court we have. And with the upcoming election, and they're very likely going to be an instance where a court case makes it to the Supreme Court, because Donald Trump is not going to just sit there and take the election as it comes. They're going to try to interfere using a conservative judiciary that he put in place, that he appointed. He's hoping for an outcome like he's receiving in the Eileen Cannon case, the documents case in Florida. He's hoping for that with the Supreme Court. It's more important now than ever that people are aware of what is taking place with the Supreme Court and their corruption, their lack of independency. Anyway, you can comment below. I would appreciate you sharing the video. You could also call, leave me a voicemail, 714-576-4054. And of course, as always, you can email me daily at dollemore.com. Please consider supporting this work, helping me make these videos. For $1.99 a month, you can click the join button. Well, you can do that for free. But once you click, you can sign up to be a channel member for $1.99 a month. You can also go over to patreon.com/IDoubtIt podcast, which is not for the podcast solely. It also helps support these videos here. I would appreciate it. Follow me on social media. I'd love to see you there. I am at Dollemore everywhere. And I'll see you next time. Be genuine. Take care of one another.